Hey, hi, hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jesse, and today we're kicking off a new reading vlog. In this reading vlog, BOOKTUBE'S book hauls are going to control my TBR. I've selected 3 booktubers. I'm going to be watching their most recent book haul and selecting a book from that book haul to read. I'm really hoping that some of these booktubers have hauled books that I own, because as I've said time and time again recently, I am really trying to decrease my TBR and just trying my best to get it to a much more manageable place. The thing about this reading vlog concept though is that I feel like book hauls typically have a lot of like new releases in them because people are obviously buying new releases, new things that have come out. So I'm really hoping that I can find some like backlist titles or even just like books that came out last year, because last year I was a book buying freak and was buying all the things. So hopefully I'm able to find some books that I own within these videos. If not, I will be utilizing the library. And if not the library, then the bookstore we go, I guess. The first booktuber that I chose is Lexi, aka Alexandra Rosalind. I think she's been around for a while, but I am a new subscriber to her channel. Somebody told me somewhat recently in the past few months that her and I have similar book taste, and so that was like an automatic subscribe for me. And when I tell you I am hooked on her channel, I mean I am hooked. I love the way that she talks about books, and I feel like she just gets me excited to read, which is what you want in a booktuber. I'm going to be pulling a book from her most recent book haul, which is called I Went Shopping at Barnes & Noble. Let's do a massive book haul. I will leave a link down below in the description to the video along with her channel. Go check her out, go subscribe. Let's find out what the first read of this vlog is going to be. Okay, I lucked out. She hauled a book that I received last year in a PR package, and that book is Dogs of Summer. Truthfully, the description for this book is very vague in telling you what it's about, but basically we are following these 2 girls who live in this town that is right next to a volcano, and it says that the girls dream of hitching a ride down to the beach and escaping their horizonless town. Like, that's basically all that the description tells me. It does go on to say that Dogs of Summer is a story of exquisite yearning and a friendship that simmers into a painful sexual awakening over the course of one hot summer. So it sounds like it's going to be exploring sexual identity between these 2 girls, but I will definitely let you guys know more about this book once I get a little bit deeper in and get some more details. And with that, let's get to reading. Good morning. I have a bit of a reading update for you guys. I got to page 103 in Dogs of Summer. This book has been really fascinating so far, to say the least. I had to actually look this book up on Goodreads just to confirm the fact that it's not a nonfiction book, because it feels like a nonfiction book. Like, as I was reading it, I was like, is this a story that like actually happened? But it is in fact a fiction book, so they're just doing a really good job of making everything feel very real. Especially with the way that it's written and the things that are being explored. Oftentimes it feels like you're just like reading somebody's journal, which I really like that feeling. Like, I like the feeling of reading somebody's journal. There are times when I'm like, should I be reading this? But that's just because it's very detailed with the things that are popping up throughout this book. So it's a coming of age story about these 2 girls who are incredibly inseparable. They have a very strong bond. Specifically, the perspective that we're reading from, which the character's name is Shit. That's the main girl's perspective that we're reading from. She is like obsessed with her bestie Isora, putting her on a pedestal and basically just like wanting to be her. She basically follows her every move, and if Isora tells her to do something, she will do it. The writing style feels very like stream of conscious at times. Other times it feels like very listy. Like, it feels like it like lists things in a way to describe them. I have an example, but I don't feel like it's the best example. Navy blue, pink, yellow, more yellow, burnt yellow, fried yolk yellow, and red. That's what the houses in this neighborhood were like. Bright and colorful. That's not the best example, but there's so many instances where that is utilized in a way to like describe something. They will just like list out a bunch of different things to describe something. I feel like this book is like the ultimate look into being a young person and being very curious. And when I mean curious, I mean, there's a moment where the main character mentions the fact that the 2 girls peed on each other just to see what it felt like. Which I know is very odd, but there are so many scenes like that. Some are just very odd, and some are like downright vomit-worthy. Like, there was one that had me like gagging. I'm not gonna go into full detail on this specific scene, but if you've read this book, the poop licorice scene, I was speechless, honestly speechless. There's an intense look at the pressures to be a specific body type and how the adults are the ones kind of influencing that like mindset. And we see these girls do these very devastating things to their bodies in order to try and be a specific body type, and it's just sad. It's just really sad. There's also mention of like the adults putting the girls on diets at times, and it just is mind-boggling. Like, it just makes me so devastated. So I would say that, like, if you're gonna read this book, it's very triggering in that sense. So just be mindful of that if you are planning on picking up this book and reading it. It also is exploring the girls, exploring their sexual identities, and kind of just figuring out that path. And I'm really enjoying that journey and interested to see where that ends up going. It doesn't feel like there's sort of an overarching plot, truthfully. Like, I don't know what this book is leading to, but I also don't know if it's that type of book. Like, it just feels like it's a book where these two girls are just figuring out their lives, and again, just being very curious. So I am eager to get to the end. I don't foresee this book being a 5-star read for me, but I am enjoying it. Like, I am finding it a really interesting read, and I don't know that I would recommend it necessarily. That's where I'm at with it. I'm like, I don't really see myself being like, y'all should go read this book, but I would be curious to know other people's thoughts on it. It's one of those situations where once I finish reading this book and sharing my thoughts with you guys, I'm gonna be running onto Goodreads to see what other people are saying about it. Also random, but it keeps mentioning Hamtaro, which was such a big part of my childhood, so every time it mentions it, I'm just like, nostalgia! Actually, hold the phone. I carry my own little Hamtaro with me wherever I go. I am chained to nostalgia. I will fully cop up to that. Getting ready to make my hyperfixation snack. This is something that I've been eating like non-stop lately. It's literally just rice cake and jam. I got these 2 jams from Aldi and they're so good. I especially love the pineapple coconut one, but the raspberry one is also really good. So I recommend these, but who knows if they're in every Aldi. So I feel like Aldi is such a hit or miss place. Like, you never know what you're gonna get when you walk into an Aldi. I'm going to the gym later for more laps. I've been really enjoying swimming lately. I feel like I'm finally getting into the rhythm of it. There for a while I was like, I am dying. I thought it was gonna be easy to swim laps just because like I grew up swimming, but I didn't realize how difficult it actually is. So I'm glad to finally be like finding a rhythm with swimming. I'm also having a bit of an editing day. I'm editing the last vlog that went up on this channel. That's what I'm working on, that's what I'm focusing on, and I'm also gonna be trying to finish this book. That's the plan today. Cheers to you. Cheers to me. So good. Best snack ever. I'll update you guys once I've finished with Dogs of Summer. I finished Dogs of Summer. I truthfully didn't like die hard love this book, but I still enjoyed different aspects of it. I really like the way that it ended. It kind of ends in like a very eerie type feeling. And it's not one of those books where it answers all of your questions. You're leaving it with a lot of unanswered questions. In fact, I'm leaving it feeling like a lot of this book is very ambiguous. It's very open-ended. It's very like, leave it to the reader to kind of just come up with their own conclusions to different things that pop up throughout the book. And for the most part, I enjoyed it. There were a few things that were brought up that like made me really uncomfortable. And I know that you're supposed to feel some sort of discomfort as you're reading this book. Like, I think that that is a part of it. It's really showcasing some of the brutal things that can happen as you're growing up. There were just some things that were brought up that I didn't feel were necessary or that just made me really uncomfortable. I'm gonna mention like a small spoilery thing just to kind of give some context as to like what made me uncomfortable. There's a scene where our main character manipulates this other girl into touching her in a sexual manner. That just made me uncomfortable, obviously because of the like manipulation aspect of it. And then to me, it just never felt like we got like a lesson out of that scene, and it just made me feel some kind of way. Like, it just made me feel like a little bit icky and uncomfortable. What are we doing with these scenes? What are these scenes adding? And like, how are they affecting things? I just never felt like we got sort of conclusions to those things. It's one of those stories where it feels like you're bouncing around between all these different story fragments. I never felt its completeness. I felt like we could have reached a conclusion with all these things that were brought up, but at the same time, like, I feel like that kind of story structure style somehow worked for this story. I landed on a 2.5 out of 5 stars with this one. I feel like for the most part I enjoyed it, but there were aspects of it that I wanted more from, and then also I just felt uncomfortable, and so like that element of it made me lower my rating, even though like I know that I'm supposed to feel that way while reading this book, but it still makes me want to lower it a rating. So that's what I'm doing. It's going down to a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you to Lexi for hauling this book recently so that I was able to bump it up my TBR and read it. Let's pick out the next booktuber and find out my next read. Alright, the next booktuber that I am picking a book from their book haul is Booked and Busy. She's one of my favorite booktube fantasy channels. I wouldn't say that she only reads fantasy because I feel like from time to time she'll read a romance or just a contemporary story. But I just adore the way that she talks about fantasy books. I can sometimes find fantasy books to be a little bit intimidating at times. I feel like she talks about them in a way where it's like, you don't have to be intimidated by this. Like, it's such a fun ride and you will enjoy the process, and I just feel like she just puts me at ease when it comes to approaching fantasy. Her last book haul was posted on July 11th and it's called Buying Books to Spark Joy. Talk about a big mood. I will link her video and her channel down below in the description. Go and check her out. Go and subscribe to her. She's the best. Now let's see if I can find a book that I already own within this video. Please have a back title. Fingers crossed. Please, 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 please. I am actually so excited about the book that I picked from her video. It's another Margaret Rogerson book, and I read a Margaret Rogerson book recently, Sorcery of Thorns, and I freaking loved it. The book in question is An Enchantment of Ravens. I have been wanting to read this one for so long. I'm the type of person where I will hold off reading a book if I feel like it's meant for a specific season, and this book has always given me the biggest fall time vibes, but I'm gonna push myself to break through my mood reader barrier and stop letting my mood readerness hold me back from reading it. In this book we are following Isabel, who paints portraits for these fae folk, which can be like a pretty shady job to take on because fae cannot be trusted. So she ends up getting this job to paint this portrait for the Autumn Prince. Maybe that's why I am like, this book needs to be read during autumn because it follows the Autumn Prince. Anyway, she ends up painting this portrait of the Autumn Prince and giving him human emotion in the portrait. And doing this, she doesn't realize how risky it is for him. It puts him in this position where he could lose everything. So Isabel finds herself being taken by this Autumn Prince to his kingdom in order to stand trial for her wrongdoings. I'm sure that other things happen. I'm more than sure that this is a bit of a romance situation too, so I feel like the two might end up falling in love with each other. I just assume that that's going to happen. I really hope that this ends up being a banger as well. I will keep you guys updated. It's time for reading. It's time for a reading update. I've gotten to what page am I on? Page 156, chapter 12. I think Margaret Rogerson might be becoming a new favorite of mine. Why have I been putting off her books? Why? I feel like I always do this. Like, I will put off an author for so long and then I'll start reading their books and I'm like, why did I put them off for so long? Why did I put off these books? Because they're so freaking good. Mind you, I don't think that this book is perfect, but like my entertainment level is overpassing any sort of critiques that I have for this book. Like, it's one of those books where I just feel like so comforted while I'm reading it, even though like it's not necessarily the most comforting read. There are some unnerving things happening throughout this book, but I love the writing style. It's right up my alley. The characters are so much fun and have so much personality, and I love them. There was a mention of a Silas at the beginning of this book, and I'm like, is that the Silas from A Sorcery of Thorns? The world is interesting and a little bit eerie at times, and I'm just having so much fun with this book. Like, so much fun. I don't know if I like it more than A Sorcery of Thorns, but it's definitely exceeding my expectations. I know that when this book first came out, there were a lot of people disappointed by it or underwhelmed by it, and because of that, I had always been a little bit nervous and hesitant to go into this book. So to now be in it and be enjoying it as much as I am very satisfied. And I feel like this means that I need to stop listening to other people's thoughts and just go with my gut on if I feel like I'm going to enjoy a book, because sometimes I do let that like affect my own reading life. Like, if I know that a lot of people have read a book and feel underwhelmed by it, I will put off reading that specific book because I'm like, well, lots of people aren't enjoying it, so I probably want to enjoy it too. Like, no, you have to just figure it out for yourself, Jesse. I want to be clear though that I don't think that this book is perfect. I have quite a few critiques as well. One in particular is that I just wish things were kind of like developed a bit more. There are things that are brought up that I want to be explored, and sometimes it's just leaving me feeling a little bit unsatisfied. This is one of those books too where like the characters might be in their late teens, but as I'm reading it, I'm like, you guys are adults. Like, you are in mid-20s. Like, that's where I am placing you in my head. I don't care if this book is telling me that you are late teens. No, to me, you are adults. They just don't feel like teenagers to me in the slightest. I love that like sort of edge that fae books can bring, because it's one of those situations where like you cannot trust anybody. You cannot trust any of the characters. It doesn't matter how much you care about a specific character. If they are fae, you gotta be sus. You gotta be sussing them out the whole time. It brings in such an unstable reading reading experience, and I love that. I'm excited to keep reading this. I have a stream with my channel members tomorrow, so I'm definitely going to be knocking this one out then. Tonight, I'm going to see the movie Twisters. I watched the OG a couple months back, and I really enjoyed it. It was my first time ever watching it, and I'm interested to see what this movie brings to the table. I am a little bit hesitant, because I feel like with any sort of like reboot or sequel moment, which I don't think that it's necessarily either of those, like I think it's going to be its own entity. I'm sure that it will like reference the original movie, but I feel like I always go into movies like this just a little bit hesitant because I feel like I've been let down by a lot of reboots in the past, so I'm going to go into it with my guard up, but I am still excited to see the movie tonight. So that's my plan. I'll bring you guys along with me. Let's get back to reading. I am fully trying to get my steering wheel out of the frame because, as we know, my camera loves to make the steering wheel the main character and only focus on it and make me blurry. But no, I'm the main character. Okay, camera, are you listening to me? I don't want to have to put you in timeout again. I finished An Enchantment of Ravens and Miss Rogerson. We've got another banger on our hands. This was delightful and I loved every bit of it, even though I feel like this is a book that I was set up to not really love because it does go into a place where it's like very focused on the romance. And like, sure, the fact that like the plot does kind of go in this direction where it's like very smothered by the romance was not my favorite aspect of it, but I think I like expected that going into it. I think I knew beforehand that it was going to be pretty romance heavy, and so I was kind of able to like shelve my romance rage and just kind of accept it for what it was. It's a very fairy tale-esque story, and I think that that's my favorite thing about it. The writing did such a good job of just like giving it this sort of magical and enchanting element to it, but also making it a little bit eerie and a little bit uncomfortable at times because of the Fae and how they're able to like glamour things and get you to trust them even though they are completely untrustworthy. Like, I just loved that sort of mixture. The writing style is very rich in terms of pretty words. I would say that it like borders the line of being almost too flowery. As I was reading it, I was like, I could see people having a problem with the writing style in particular because it does kind of ride that line of like, is this too much or is this just enough? But I also feel like I just can't imagine what this book would be like had it not had that style of writing, because I think it just like is very fitting to the story. It does a really good job of describing things in a really beautiful way and then writing a really engaging plot and building up this beautiful world. Like, I just really loved it. This is in fact a very fall time read, and I'm pretty upset with myself that I didn't save it for fall time, but I am untrustworthy. If I were to have set this aside and wait till fall time would have come around and I wouldn't have read it. The characters in this had my heart. They have my heart, not had, not a past tense situation. They still currently have my heart. I love them dearly. I felt a similar way to these characters as I did about the Sorcery of Thorns characters. I love Isabel and Rook separately, and then I also love them together. Again, the plot is very focused on the romance. It's kind of like the driving force behind a lot of the things that happen. I knew that going in, and also like there's literally a law in here about like Fae and humans. I think it's called the Good Law, and it basically states that Fae and human are not allowed to fall in love. And when you hear that, you're like, okay, well, I know where the story is gonna go, obviously. It's very focused on these two characters coming together and forging some kind of relationship, and it truthfully does happen pretty quick. Like, I feel like the formation of the relationship is pretty rapid, and normally I would have a problem with that, but I don't know why. It just like, I think because there were so many things working in this book that I was kind of able to overlook things that I normally would be annoyed by. And I think the author did a really good job of writing the romance in a way where it didn't feel cringe. I'm landing on a 4-star rating with this book, a 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved it, and I want to read more from Margaret Rogerson. I had a live stream with my channel members earlier when I finished this book, and one of my channel members came up with a concept for me to where I could fit in Vespertine. So I will be reading another Margaret Rogerson book very soon. I'm very excited about it. I ended up finishing this rather quickly on my live stream because I didn't have very much left of it, so I switched over to this graphic novel that I've been working on called The Girl from the Sea, and it was so good. I would also give this a 4 out of 5 stars. It's just such such a beautiful story. In this book, we are following a girl named Morgan, and she is ready to just kind of like escape her life. Like, she wants to grow up and leave this island behind that she's been living on. She wants to escape her mom's divorced, her annoying little brother, and her friends, because they all don't know the true Morgan, that being the fact that she likes girls. When Morgan is saved from drowning by this girl named Kelty, it kind of opens up this door of this possibility of what could be if she actually connected and formed a relationship with another girl. This is actually by an author who wrote one of my favorite graphic novels, The Witch Boy. I had no idea that this was the same creator, so that's really cool. It was just a beautiful story. It was very wholesome. It's one of those graphic novels where you leave it just feeling good. I love reading anything and leaving it feeling good. Who doesn't want to feel good? Come on now. If you don't want to feel good, I'm concerned. I saw Twisters last night and it was fantastic. It was emotional at times, it was intense at times, and I really actually appreciated the fact that like it didn't make too many references to the OG, because I feel like sometimes these reboots or sequels, companions can oftentimes just feel very fan servicey, and to me that like falls into like a cheesy place. Like, I don't mind the references if they make sense to the story, but there are times when it just feels like they are really trying to like fan service, and it just like ruins it for me. But I think that they did a really good job with Twisters. Anyway, it's time to talk about the next booktuber and the last book that I'll be reading for this vlog. Alright, the last booktuber that I chose for this video is the Book Castle. I discovered her channel earlier this year and I really love it, especially if you just love like visually pleasing videos. She has such a nice aesthetic. Like, every time that I click on one of her videos, I know the background's gonna be visual, I know the quality's gonna be amazing, and I also love the way that she talks about books. Her last video was a summer book haul, and that's what I'm gonna be pulling from. Let's find out what my final read is going to be. Okay, so she had 2 books on her list that I own and I have not read yet, so we're winning there. The 2 books in question are Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. I've enjoyed One Thing by Alex E. Harrow in the past. I read Starling House and I just felt kind of okay about it, so I don't know if I want to go in that direction or if I want to read something that's like very new to me in terms of the author, and that is The Art Thief. And I got my hands on it pretty recently, so I feel like it'd be nice to like go ahead and read this book. I also love nonfiction, and I've been kind of looking for a doorway back into nonfiction, so with that information, I think I'm gonna go with The Art Thief. Let me go find my copy. And we're back. Whoa, I was really close to the camera. I'm sorry. This is my copy. It's a Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, so it has bats on the paper edges. Those are so fun. Again, as I said, this is a nonfiction book, and it's about one of the most prolific art thieves of all time. It says he pulled off more than 200 heists, often in crowded museums in broad daylight. Like, that's wild. I'm very eager to get into this one and to see how these heists were pulled off, how he got away with doing it for so long, and like what it was like during that time as he was stealing these pieces. This has been on my radar for quite some time. I remember first seeing it in an airport bookstore and that being the thing that like made me want to read it. Not just specifically seeing it in the airport bookstore, but like picking it up and reading what it was about. And I finally got my hands on a copy. So with that being said, it's time for reading. Finished The Art Thief. I read this book in 2 sittings. It was such an engaging read and one of the better nonfiction books that I've read in a very long time. And I want to say that if you're somebody that's been wanting to get into the nonfiction lane, that this might be a good place to start. Might be a good place to kind of like merge into that lane. It's one of the more engaging nonfiction books that I've read, and it also reads like a fiction book. You have an interesting plot, interesting characters, twists and turns. So I would argue that there are a lot of nonfiction books out there that are written in this style, written in a way that feels like fiction. I feel like there's a stigma surrounding nonfiction books that they're always boring and uninteresting, and while I think that there are some out there that like read like a textbook and that's not enjoyable, this one did not fall into that category. There were so many elements to the story that were so fascinating. One was how the couple so easily got away with all the art theft that they committed. They very rarely ran into any hiccups, but when they did run into a hiccup, they got through it so easily. There would be times when they would make a loud noise guys while stealing art, and they were still able to get away with it without a hitch. The other thing that I found so fascinating about the story was just Stefan's character. He is just so fascinating in that he wasn't stealing art because he loved the act of stealing. He just genuinely loves art. He felt like the art was speaking to him and he had to have it. Art was basically his drug. So I just found it so fascinating that like he didn't get a high off the act of stealing the art. It was the art itself. He was never getting the art in order to sell it and make a profit. He just wanted these prized possessions. And I just found him to be such an interesting character. And the fact that like he continued to pursue this even after things go down in a bad way. Obviously, I don't want to like spoil this book. I feel like with nonfiction books, it's like, can you really spoil them? But like, I would love for other people to read this book and uncover the story for themselves. But I do just find it wild that he just continues to steal art. I'm landing on a 4-star rating with this one, a 4 out of 5 stars. I only knocked it a star just because things kind of slowed down when the legal things started to happen. And it just was like not super interesting. I guess it was interesting like finding out the sentencing would be like, but just kind of getting to the point of finding out the sentencing was kind of slower and not as interesting to me. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend checking out The Art Thief. Again, if you are somebody who's been wanting to get into nonfiction, I highly recommend this one. That brings us to the end of this video. I am going to give you my rankings, even though I feel like you guys can probably guess what's best to worst. Even though truthfully, I did really enjoy all of these books. So shout out to the booktubers who hauled these books. I appreciate you guys for hauling these books because it got me to read them. I needed a little nudge to get to all of these books, and this video concept really helped me out. My favorite book from this video is An Enchantment of Ravens. I feel like Margaret Rogerson is on her way to becoming a new favorite author of mine. Then I would say The Art Thief, which leaves us with Dogs of Summer at the bottom ranking. Even though I still really enjoyed this one, there were just bits of it that I didn't love and things that just made me uncomfortable and feel a little bit icky, even though I know I was supposed to feel that way. Anyway, regardless, those are all the books that I read for this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them. And also, let me know down below in the comments a recent book that you hauled, a recent book that you brought into your collection. Let me know down below in the comments, and maybe it'll control my TBR next. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon, and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright and tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye-o!